I think that's it for my intro, and I'd like to invite Shlomo over to start the day. Thank you, everyone. Have a great 2 days.
Getting money. If you ain't getting money, then you ain't got nothing for me.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Ariella. Let's put this over here. Okay, it's great to see everyone. Like Ariella said, it's really great to catch up with people who we see coming year in and year out to. This is our 10th Licensing Live. And I also want to welcome all the new people. We find it's a really great opportunity for people to network and to meet each other. Often we'll find when we're working with different customers and partners that they feel a bit isolated, who's dealing with licensing, entitlement management, and this kind of business transformation. This is a good way to bring people together to talk about some common things that are happening across different companies and across different industries. So what I'm going to focus on today is really around business change and transformation. I'm going to tie that into our theme today of empowering the future with software monetization. But before I do that, let's test the app that Ariella just mentioned with a polling question. So we're going to have our first polling question for the day, where we want to get to know the audience here. So are you an equipment manufacturer, a hardware company, right, that might have hardware that are selling software alongside? Or are you a software vendor, meaning selling pure software, whether on-premise, in the cloud, or a hybrid of such? So please go ahead, and we're going to see live results. And so you'll see this throughout the day. So if you have not yet downloaded the app, I encourage you to do so in order to be able to see the live feedback here. So we've got, you can see it's still coming in with the live results. We'll give it a second as people are answering the polling question. Okay, so it looks like it's around settled in around 22% are hardware manufacturers, almost 47%, almost 50% software. And then there's the 32% that are both doing hardware as well as software. So it's an interesting mix. So if you look at it the overall, then it really seems that 50% are doing software only, and about 50% are doing hardware and software, or some sort of combination of the two. Okay, so thanks for participating. And that is really just to give you a sense of what you're going to be seeing throughout the day. And it was actually very successful last year as well to see what people's results were. Okay, so let's talk about change. So those have either read things from Peter Drucker. He talks a lot about change, the need for innovation. And I found this quote interesting. The enterprise that does not innovate ages and declines. And in a period of rapid change, such as the present, the decline will be fast. I truthfully don't know when he wrote this, but he talks about rapid change such as the present. And I think we in the technology industry, I think that describes kind of how the industry is, all the time, right? There's always change going on. There's transformation that's happening, and we're really seeing it in the market, and we're seeing it from our own customers. Before I really talk about business change, any Golden State Warriors fans in the house? Not a surprise, right? Where we are. I am a suffering New York Knicks fan, so I have been watching from the sides and seeing how Golden State has really transformed the game of basketball. Right? It's transformed forever. Things like small ball, positionless play, three-point shooting, right? Just the flow of the game is completely changed. Most of the NBA now is trying to model themselves. Unfortunately, the Knicks are still, years away probably from that, trying to model themselves after what Golden State has done. And they've really taken this on, and they've transformed and changed the way the game has been played. So why am I talking about change today? It's because when we work with our customers, right, whether they're pure software companies that are looking to move from a perpetual license model to transform their business to subscription and to cloud, or if they're hardware device manufacturers that are looking to go from a hardware-centric model to software-centric and then adding services and IoT and whatnot, what we hear consistently from them is we need to transform our business. Right? We get into these discussions and ask them, why are you thinking about software monetization? What's driving it? And they talk about business transformation. Right? And it might be business transformation at the full company level. It might be at a business unit level, a product line, or whatnot. But transformation comes up repeatedly. And so that's what I wanted to really focus on for this morning, is this transformation, what's truly driving it, and how companies are approaching this. What we see when we talk to the customers and dig in a little bit more and ask about, okay, well, what is actually driving that transformation? Why do you need to transform? It touches on typically different types of trends, and Ariella mentioned earlier. A lot of the focus today are going to be on these three mega trends that we see. One is digital transformation. Right? So that's companies that are changing to become more digital in order them to enable them to go after new types of business, offer new business models, really change the way that they operate in a more digital mode that gives them that flexibility. We're also hearing about servitization, right? This has been a number of years coming, and we're hearing it very consistently, no matter if the companies are software companies moving towards cloud services, or device companies are looking at how do they extend their solutions and their offerings to offer more types of services to their customers. And the third is consumerization, right? We've been talking for years about consumerization of IT, but it's happening, right? It's not just selling into an organization, but it's the individual user who's expecting to be able to do self-service, to be able to who's expecting to get instantaneous access, right? Really to get the same type of experience that they have in their consumer apps that they're using in their consumer life that they're getting in the business types of applications and services and systems and everything that they're utilizing and using. And so these are three of the mega trends that we're seeing, that we're hearing from our customers. Again, digital transformation, servitization, consumerization. And we're going to have in-depth sessions on each of these today to hear both from analysts as well as from companies that are embracing these trends in order to transform their own businesses. But it doesn't stop there. When we talk to our customers, that's just really the drivers, is the market dynamic, which then really leads to changing customer demand. Right? So market dynamic gets them thinking, but it's really their customers that are changing the way that they want to buy their solutions, no matter what vertical that they're in. We sell to companies and we partner with companies from many different types of industries and verticals. And so it starts with the market dynamics of how are these dynamics and the change in the market changing what my customer needs. And then it impacts how they have to think about their own business strategy. Are we going to offer our solutions to the same customers? Do we think that we have new opportunities to go after new segments, new geographies, new verticals? And then that leads into things like their solution offering. Well, we've been offering a product. How do we get to services? How do we get to a full end-to-end solution? What do we need to do in terms of our commercial model? Everything from do we need to change our business model, our licensing model, or go-to-market? Do we sell direct? What about channel? Wait, if we're already selling through channel and now we're selling hardware and then we want to add services, how does that affect our channel if we now have this direct link to our customers? And many types of questions around that. And then finally, there's the operating model, which it sounds pretty straightforward that you're thinking about changing your business strategy. You have to think about your solution, the commercial aspects, and the operating model. But too many times we've actually been in discussions with customers and they say, yeah, we kind of thought about the operating model when it was already a little bit too late. How are we actually going to change from, for example, the hardware-centric company to be able to fulfill and support their software and deliver software and software licenses and everything around it? So these are at a high level, the different areas that when we're working with companies, we see that they're thinking about. The ones that are successful are really going into the detail aspects of each one of these items in order to ensure that they're going to have a successful transformation. What that leads to in these discussions, we've kind of noticed, and this is really, I would say, the 30,000-foot view, is that companies are in different phases of these transformations. Like I said, every single company without fail is saying they need to transform. Some of them are at that awareness phase. We know we need to. It's a couple of people in the corner thinking about transformation. It might be at the executive level. It might be within one product line. It might be someone within sales. But there's some awareness that's starting to build within the company. The other companies that we see are in the planning phase, right? They're really going through the detailed planning around how do they actually drive transformation. Like I said in the previous slide, what's their business strategy? How are their customers' demand changing? What are they going to do from an operating perspective, et cetera? The third is the execution, right? They want to go ahead and they want to start rolling it out. They're going from the planning and then they start to roll it out and they see how it starts to impact their business and how it impacts their customers, what they got right, what they didn't get right, what they need to then learn from and adjust, and that's the last phase. This is, like I said, a 30,000-foot view. You can break this down into much smaller projects or tasks or much more detailed view of different phases of this transformation, of the transformation companies are going through. But at a high level, this is kind of how we see our own customers going through and what phase that they're in. So let's go to the next polling question. Curious to hear from the audience here. Where are you in your transformation journey? Are you just in that first phase of awareness? Are you in the planning phase? Are you executing? Are you adjusting? Or are you in denial and think you actually don't need to change? See if anyone answers that. Yeah, we have a few. That's good. That means you're not exactly in denial if you recognize it, right? Because I think this is a really interesting result so far. I mean, some of the votes are still coming in. And it's really interesting to see that in the planning kind of execution phases where a lot of companies are in the room are in that stage. And truthfully, it's not really surprising to us, right? Because if you're just in the early stage of awareness, you might come here to start the learnings. But I think if you're in the planning, the execution phase, it's when you're getting to the practical steps of, okay, we're transforming. Now let's think about how we do all these different things and how does that tie back into things like software monetization and how we adjust our business models and how we license and how we price and how we operate and whatnot. So really quite interesting to see this. It's good also that some people admitted that their companies are in denial. So thanks for the response. Okay. What I also want to share with you for the next few minutes is actually our own business transformation that we've gone through. So Gemalto as a company, you can see this even from the way our CEO talks to the market, is going through a transformation and has been for a number of years. Very clearly we stated in terms of some of the long-term goals of the company, is to go from a product-centric kind of a company to a solution-centric company, to services, to platforms, to software. And there are different parts of the company that are going at a different pace naturally, right? You have different parts of the business. What I want to share is some of the things that we've done ourselves within our software monetization group over the last number of years in order to transform our own business and hopefully to give you some insight in terms of the things that we've come across that have helped us and something that you might be able to take away from this session. So for us, it all started a number of years back. When you think back about the market dynamics, we work with software companies and we work with hardware companies, device vendors. Right? And we started hearing, back when cloud and SaaS and those types of things were just coming into market, from our software customers, we have this perpetual models. There are these new startups that are going in and trying to compete with us in the SaaS business. We need to think about how we go from an on-premise kind of perpetual software company to move into subscriptions into cloud. From the device vendors, they were thinking about, well, their hardware is getting commoditized. How do they move from the commoditized hardware to differentiate themselves through software? And then the next phase was, well, how do we also then monetize that software? Where do we go from there? We want to then offer services. We're collecting a lot of data. We want to think about data monetization and all these different aspects. And they turned to us as their partner who previously was really providing products, right, point solutions to help them with some licensing challenges, some enforcement, some security, to look at us at how do we help them in terms of partnering with them as a strategic partner in this end-to-end view of how do they do their software monetization. Because they're technology companies, and software was at the core of the change that they were going through. They also recognized where the homegrown systems that many companies were building before that were not scalable, they weren't flexible enough, it was too hard for them to adjust to the new realities of what was happening in terms of the way their customers were deploying software, whether through virtualization, in the cloud, subscription, usage, et cetera. And so we recognized that our own customers were going through some major changes, which then also required us to rethink, how do we go from a product point solution partner of theirs to really being a strategic partner that's helping them with their end-to-end solutions. And so we sat down, I'm talking a number of years back, and we started with a blank whiteboard, blank piece of paper. Said, okay, let's rethink this. Who are the types of customers that we're supporting? How do we want to prioritize this? Which verticals do we think are moving faster than others? Which geographies are we seeing the biggest change and the most dramatic change? Even what size companies, what types of companies are we going to be supporting? And then we looked at that and we came to a consensus and agreement on where our priorities need to be. And it goes back to what I said in one of the earlier slides. Well, then what's our business strategy around that? What's our commercial model, our solution offering, our operating model, et cetera? And one of the things that we saw in this stage for us that was critical and continues to be critical is the need to prioritize relentlessly. Right? In the strategy investment phase, when you're building the strategy and even on a continuous basis, is how do you make sure you prioritize? I've said this to some people in the past, I think also, and some people maybe in side conversations. So I came into the software monetization business just over 10 years ago. a company named Aladdin. Aladdin was then acquired by SafeNet. SafeNet was acquired by Gemalto, and here we are today. When I first joined, my role was really to figure out, okay, where are the opportunities for growth? And this is just before the cloud and SaaS and all were getting popular, and it was really kind of hard to figure out, okay, which direction do we go in? We got to the point over the last few years where there's many different directions we can go, and we just need to make sure that we prioritize relentlessly. At the same time, and it's the challenge of the balance of this, is you also want to make sure that you give your organization the flexibility to innovate. Right? If you prioritize too much, then you're stopping anyone from being able to go and try new things. And so we had to find this balance. One example that worked for us is when we first launched our cloud licensing offering a number of years ago, we recognized that our customers were going to need a new way to deploying licenses. But we also realized that internally, the best way to go about it and make sure we bring the right thing to market and bring it quickly was to actually carve out a team, almost like an internal startup, in order to be able to have them very focused on those priorities while the rest of the business was continuing to support the customers that we already were really working with very closely. Knowing that if we had to test it, get to the right solution, and then successfully bring it back into the part of the overall product portfolio. And that's where we are today. And we found these types of methods have really worked for us. The second item is around culture and organization. Right? So you decide you want to go and change your business, transform your business. Well, for example, we started offering cloud services. Many of our customers have. The type of support you need is very different when a customer calls and says, oh, they need support for their software solution, for their cloud offering, versus what you were providing for a product or for a hardware solution. That's just one example. Another, we realized that as being a really central part of our customers' business transformation, they were looking at us as the experts to help them in things like how do they change their business processes, what's the best way that they can adjust their business models. And we recognized that we needed to help them not just in terms of providing technical solutions, but also in a consulting and a services engagement. And we've actually built up a really strong team and a really strong practice of consultants, a number of whom are in the room today, in order to help our customers through that transition. So organizationally, we also had to think, and go back to the priorities also, is how do you balance the investments in the organization, but how do we make sure it's not just sending our products and solutions to the customers, but really helping them along the journey. With that, it's also a cultural change. Right? We were a business that was ongoing for many years. We had many customers that we're working with very closely. And we had a really strong business. But culturally, we had to really communicate to our internally as well as to our customers around the direction that we were going on because we believed it was the right path. And there's no such thing as over-communicating in this respect. It's getting everyone on board, right? Change is hard. And truly to drive that change, you really need to get buy-in across the organization, the different functions, and all the levels. The third aspect is systems and processes. This is something that's also ongoing, right? You're changing your business. For example, you're going from a hardware-centric model to a software-centric model. Well, if your entire business setup, your operational model was set up to release new hardware products, to have supply chain around hardware, fulfillment, support, et cetera, well, you have to start thinking about how do I do that for software and for services. Right? And that's just some of the high-level aspects. What we actually did was we sat down, and it was critically important to get a cross-functional team in order to break down any silos. We pulled together the entire team, and again, starting from a blank piece of paper, and said, okay, in the new way we're going about this, and we're providing these full end-to-end solutions, how do we need to operate differently than what we've been doing in the past? What are the systems we need in place in order to make sure that we can successfully provide a great customer experience and also manage this at scale internally within our own company? What are the processes that we need to change? And this is something that's ongoing. It doesn't stop. We have to prioritize. You start getting things implemented, and then you move on to the next thing, you adjust. And that brings me to the last item, which is the analysis and the adjustment. When we started off, right, when I said a number of years back, we started with a blank whiteboard, our strategy, which customers are we going to go after, which verticals, which markets. We went in 4 directions kind of that we were testing initially. And after, 9 months, 12 months or so, we realized a couple of things. One, we were spreading ourselves too thin. And 2, there were really 2 different segments or markets that we felt that where we could provide the most value, that had the most traction, and that also fit well in terms of what our areas of expertise were. And so we adjusted. We said, you know what, we're going to put the other 2 areas kind of on the back burner. We'll see if we want to get back to that eventually. But We adjusted then our strategy and the structure and the process that we need to do in order to really zoom in and focus on those. So if I summarize some of our key learnings, again, from the strategy and investment perspective, it was on the one hand, prioritize relentlessly, just be really focused on priorities, but balance that with giving flexibility to the organization, whether in specific functions or across the organization, in order to be able to try new things and to innovate. From a culture and organization perspective, really think through is with the business changes that you're driving, is the organization set up for the change? Is the team trained on the change? And don't forget to communicate. And there's never enough communication. Always over-communicate. On the third is the systems and processes, right? Is making sure that you have everything in place in order to really be able to give that great customer experience, manage the business, and grow it and scale the business in order to truly make this business transformation. And finally, it's to make sure that you can adjust based on all the learnings that you get from those other. But I want to come back to the center, right? Where's the customer? Right? Putting the customer at the center, it's something that you hear about very often, but it's really easier said than done. And these are things that in my role also that it still comes up, where it's having to sometimes remind the organization if we're trying new things, wait a second, we're losing sight of the goal here. I don't want to get into the details, but I even have a couple of recent examples in my mind where we're trying new things. It's coming from the good place, where someone's saying, let's try something new. Let's go and change the way we're doing something because it'll make us more efficient. But then you have to pull back and say, wait a second, how does that impact the customer? We're making it more complicated to the customer, making them take an extra step or two in order to save efficiency on our side. And that's just some of the examples, again, without getting into too much detail around that. But for me, it starts and ends with the customer being at the center, and then everything else needs to flow from there. So that brings us then to empowering the future with software monetization. Right? This transformation that we've done, it's because we really see ourselves as being able to be a true partner to companies that are going through this business transformation, for technology companies, whether they're software providers that are moving into a subscription and cloud environments, hardware providers that are moving from hardware-centric to software-centric and services-centric models. Software monetization has become a real core component of the success of these companies and be able to make that transformation. And so for the next day and a half, we're going to focus on different aspects here. Like we said earlier, today we're going to talk about digital transformation, servitization, and consumerization. In each of those sessions, we're going to talk about both in terms of what's happening in the market as well as companies that are going through it and embracing these trends. We're going to have a session later today about being a change agent. One of the things that we heard from those that were here last year was, I'm trying to drive change in my organization. Sometimes I feel like I'm alone. How do I get executive buy-in? How do I get my peers to be bought in? How do I really drive change? And we're going to hear from people in a panel that are doing this within their organization and get some best practices and tips in terms of how they approach it. And tomorrow, as Ariella mentioned, we're really going to talk about some specific ways that companies like Juniper, like NetApp and others, tomorrow that are talking about operations and pricing and selling and licensing differently, and how they're using those methods in order to really drive the change in their businesses. So finally, I just want to come back to the basketball analogy. Right? Yes, I am a suffering Knicks fan. The problem is that the Knicks are leaving us fans because they haven't embraced the change. So don't make the same mistake. Embrace the change, drive the transformation, right? So that your customers are going to continue to be fans. Thank you very much.